Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current situation with the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, as well as the prospects for war in the Middle East involving Israel, the United States, Syria, and Iran. First, we're going to give you an overview of the peace process, and it is as follows. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Iran and the growing influence of Islam in countries whose rulers were overthrown in the Arab Spring is a major obstacle in restarting direct peace negotiations with the Palestinians. Israel believes that if the Iranian nuclear threat was eliminated and its regional influence with the Syrian government of Bashar Assad and Hamas in the Gaza Strip was reduced, it would be easier to strike a peace deal with the Palestinians. The U.S. position is that a breakthrough on the Palestinian issue would have a great deal of impact in helping the situation with Iran, as more Arab and Muslim countries would support the United States' effort to halt Iran's nuclear program. The Republican Party platform of presidential candidate Mitt Romney supports a two-state solution in the Middle East. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas indicates that the Palestinians will ask the UN General Assembly to recognize a Palestinian state based on 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital sometime this fall. Abbas said that such a request would protect the peace process and preserve the two-state solution. It is expected that about 130 countries would support the Palestinian request, which is enough to pass the resolution at the UN General Assembly. If such a decision is made by the General Assembly, it would enable the Palestinians to have the status of a non-member state and be able to join the International Criminal Court and seek to indict Israel for alleged war crimes that they say have taken place in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. Israel rejects the Palestinians' efforts for recognition of a Palestinian state at the United Nations, which bypasses direct peace negotiations with Israel. Israel Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said that Israel should present Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas with an ultimatum. If he doesn't resume negotiations and abandon his unilateral campaign for UN recognition as a state, Israel will cease to see him as a legitimate negotiating partner. Israel, he said, must take whatever measures is necessary to stop Abbas's UN application. Meanwhile, the United States is opposed to the Palestinians making a request to the United Nations General Assembly for recognition of a Palestinian state prior to the November U.S. elections. A senior Palestinian official said that the Obama administration threatened to withhold financial aid from the Palestinians if they made the request to the United Nations General Assembly before November 6th. As a result, the Palestinian Authority has decided to delay the request to unilaterally declare a state at the United Nations until after the November presidential elections in the United States. A British official said that Britain would not suspend their financial aid to the Palestinian Authority if the Palestinians decide to submit their application to the UN General Assembly seeking recognition of Palestine as a non-member state of the UN. There are 5 members of the UN Security Council who are able to veto anything that comes before the UN Security Council. These 5 countries are Britain, France, Russia, China, and the United States. Britain, France, Russia, and China have stated that they do support a Palestinian state based upon 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. When the Palestinians made this request last September, it was rejected because of a U.S. veto. I personally believe the U.S. veto came about not because of conviction, but because of the possible ramification for Obama's re-election. Based upon the current developments, it seems as though the United States and Obama is all that's preventing the UN Security Council to recognize a Palestinian state and divide Jerusalem. It has been widely reported that Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu do not get along and they strongly dislike each other. Based upon this, will Obama support, through the United Nations, a Palestinian state based upon 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital after the U.S. elections? Only time will tell. But India has stated that they support a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. An Indian spokesperson said that India is in support of UN Security Council Resolution 242 and 338, which says that Israel must return to the 67 borders and they would be granted secure and recognizable borders, that India wants a negotiated solution resulting in a sovereign, independent, viable, and united state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital, living within secure and recognized borders, side by side at peace with Israel, as endorsed in the Quartet Roadmap and UN Security Council Resolutions 1397 and 1515. Finally, in a meeting with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood President Mohamed Morsi, China expressed their support for a PLO state with East Jerusalem as its capital as well. Next, we're going to be sharing with you an overview regarding the current situation with Syria, and it is as follows. Israel media reports that former Israel Prime Minister Ehud Olmert ordered the 2007 strike on a Syrian nuclear reactor immediately after former U.S. President George Bush informed him that the United States would not attack Syria's nuclear facility. The U.S. had decided to handle the Syrian threat via diplomacy. The Israelis were convinced that time was fairly short and that they had to strike the reactor built by the Syrians with extensive input from North Korea before it became operational. As a result, Israel unilaterally bombed the reactor. Would the current Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu respond the same way if Israel feels that U.S. President Barack Obama would not be willing to attack Iran within the time frame that Israel feels is necessary to stop Iran's nuclear program? Would history repeat itself? Once again, only time will tell. France desires to work with Turkey to create a buffer zone for the Syrian rebels. France has also proposed that the Syrian opposition form a provisional government, promising to grant it immediate diplomatic recognition. Russia has suspended the use of its naval facility in the Syrian port of Tartus. Russia continues to support the Assad government politically and in a humanitarian way, along with providing intelligence and information, but is not planning to provide major arms supplies to Syria. A Russian official said, "We cannot, by military means, oppose countries that support the Syrian opposition." Finally, a significant number of Sunni Islamic militants who are fighting against the Syrian government of Bashar Assad would like to see, if Assad is removed from power, a strict form of Sharia Islamic law to be implemented as part of a future Syrian government. As a result of the overflow of leaders in other Arab countries, the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood desires to govern Egypt and Libya by religious Islamic Sharia law as well. Next, we're going to share with you an overview regarding the situation with Iran, and it is as follows. Russia reports that the Iranian Bushehr atomic power plant is now operating at full capacity. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, says that Iran has doubled the number of uranium enrichment centrifuges that it has at the Fordo facility to 2,140 from 1,064 in May. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on the international community to establish a clear red line for the Iranian nuclear program so that there would be direct consequences for Iran's actions to seek to build a nuclear bomb. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on the international community to set down clear red lines for the Iranians so Iran feels the world's determination to stop its nuclear program. Netanyahu, speaking at the beginning of the weekly cabinet meeting, articulated publicly what he's been saying for weeks behind closed doors, and that it is not enough for there to be open-ended diplomacy, but clear red lines need to be set so the Iranians see that there will be a direct consequence for their actions. I think that the truth must be told, Netanyahu said. The international community is not putting down a clear red line to Iran, and Iran is not seeing international determination to stop its nuclear program. Until the Iranians see a clear red line in this determination, he said, they will not stop moving their nuclear program forward. And Netanyahu said Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. He said that time has run out for diplomacy, and it's not acceptable to have open-ended diplomacy regarding Iran's nuclear program. In doing so, Netanyahu got into a diplomatic shouting match with U.S. Ambassador Dan Shapiro over President Barack Obama's handling of the Iranian issue. However, the Obama administration insisted that there is time and space for diplomatic solution with Iran. Furthermore, the United States is said to be working with a top Israeli newspaper to stymie Israel's efforts to strike Iran's nuclear weapons program. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Martin Dempsey said that he did not want to be complicit if Israel chose to strike Iran's nuclear program. Dempsey said an attack would clearly delay but probably not destroy Iran's nuclear program, but added that the international coalition pressuring Iran could be undone if it was attacked prematurely. Meanwhile, Israel Vice Premier Moshe Ya'alon said he feared Iran did not believe it faced a real military threat from the outside world because of mixed messages from foreign powers, including the United States. Iran sponsored a conference of non-aligned countries of the United Nations where Iran had harsh words to say about Israel. As a result, Benjamin Netanyahu has decided to address the UN General Assembly regarding the threat Iran poses to Israel in the entire Middle East. He is scheduled to leave for the United Nations on September the 27th, immediately after Yom Kippur, and then return to Israel on September the 30th, just before the onset of Sukkot. Although there has been talk of a meeting at the United Nations with U.S. President Barack Obama, no meeting has not yet been officially announced that would take place between Netanyahu and Barack at the United Nations. Well, this is going to conclude this week's Focus Israel report, where we shared with you the following key developments. Regarding the peace process, the United States has pressured the Palestinians to delay their request for recognition of a Palestinian state based upon 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital in the UN General Assembly until after the U.S. presidential elections in November. Regarding Syria, France and Turkey are working on an effort to establish a buffer zone within Syria. Russia has said it will not use its military force to protect its facility in Syria. Russia now says that Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant is fully operational. The International Atomic Energy Agency has come out with a report stating that Iran has doubled its underground nuclear capacity. As a result of these things, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the world must set clear red lines regarding Iran's nuclear program and tells the United States that time is running out on Iranian diplomacy. Meanwhile, the United States says that there still is time for diplomacy in Iran. It is being reported that the Obama administration is trying to use a large Israeli newspaper to try to persuade Israel from striking Iran. It has become clear that the United States and Israel are in a clear disagreement about Iran's nuclear program and the timeline to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Until we do it again, Shalom, in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.